Hey guys, so today we're actually headed to the Shasta County Office of Education because truthfully we have so many people come to our area and even just people in our town that ask questions about the education system and what's the best schools, how do I find the best schools for my kids? And you know, I don't have kids, newsflash, I don't have kids, so a lot of times I can't really answer in depth, you know, from experience what would be best for your family. So rather than me trying to make up some kind of information, we're gonna actually sit down with Lauren Stroud, who is the Senior Director of Content, and she's gonna share just her heart and vision for the education system and how you as a family moving to our area or somebody in our area can, you know, make a better decision for your family as to what school district works best. So let's go. So we're here at the Shasta County Office of Education and we're gonna go get set up. All right, so this is the boardroom. This is where we're gonna get set up and interview Lauren and get all the questions sorted out as to the education system here in Shasta County. So I'm really excited to be actually sitting down with you, Lauren. Over the years, we've actually had a lot of people come to our area and just ask so many questions about the education system. And truthfully, I don't have kids, no kids in the works yet. And so I think that it would be better to have somebody, one, in the field. You've been boots on the ground as a principal in years past, and now you're at the Shasta County of Education, kind of supporting the teachers in our education system. So I really feel like you have almost like this front approach as to, you know, being a resource to people coming to our area. So before we kind of dive into, from the lens of a newcomer, how would you navigate the Shasta County education system and where do I send my kid for school? Maybe give a little bit of a framework, how long you've been here, been in the teaching system, and kind of your current role here.
Yeah, so I'm a 20-year educator, which is shocking to say, but I was in the classroom for 10 years. I was a high school agriculture teacher and then decided to jump into administration. And I spent 8 to 9 years being an assistant principal and a principal. And I'm in my second year here at the County Office of Ed. My first year I was director of school support, and now I've moved into senior director of content, which in your world might mean like social media. And
in our world, that mean like social media post.
In our world, it means curriculum and instruction. And so I have a fortunate job of leading a bunch of our content area specialists. So our English language arts specialists, math, science, on and on. And we push into schools and support teachers and administrators in their professional development and their systems improvement, and really any need that they're needing support on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that honestly, so as changes happen in the state, you're kind of implementing it, rolling it out, teaching, you know, through like the system, you know, like the new changes. Out of curiosity with like content and everything, that being the education system, what has been kind of like the biggest changes over the years for that a lot of teachers and education systems are seeing?
There's a big shift in reading and literacy, actually, and a big push to the science of reading. And so there's a lot of professional development and training going on to reteach teachers how students learn to read. And we had lots of, you know, with good intention, we thought we understood that. And we're learning that really brains learn to read in very different ways than we assumed. And so right now, our literacy team is pushing out into schools and putting on so many trainings to restructure how reading is taught. And that's evident. I mean, you can see evidence of that across the nation and throughout our whole state, with reading scores really remaining stagnant. And so this is really exciting because we're realizing, oh gosh, maybe we were doing things a little bit ineffectively. And now we're learning how to do that more impactfully. And so that's a huge shift right now and a really big focus across the whole state and the whole nation. There's a big shift in math framework. And so also looking at the way that we've been teaching math and
Common Core is still that a thing?
Yeah, Common Core is still a thing, but
I watched a video and I'm like, wait, what?
Hey, look at you doing your research. Good job. But really in any math, just looking at these 8 really evidence-based effective practices and how to teach math and getting kids to really talk more about math, getting up and working on vertical spaces together, using inquiry before just, I mean, you probably remember in math classes, it's like the teacher does a sample problem and then it's like, okay, now go and do your math work. And it's just turning into much more of a collaborative, exploratory, group-based instruction. And so we're seeing shifts and just just seen, data and scores that have remained the same. And it's really cool that there's researchers and educators that have poured so much time into realizing we got to change things if we want to see scores change.
Yeah. And as you kind of implemented like the new changes, has it just started this year of 2025 or has it been 2024?
This has been happening for a few years, and the math framework we've been rolling out and supporting schools with, and there will constantly be changes. And that's what's cool about our job is that, like you said, we look at different mandates that come out from the state, different legislation, federal and state, and so we have to just retrain all of our educators and our school leaders in how to meet those mandates and how to teach more effectively.
Out of curiosity, this may be something you may not know, so I'm just going to throw a curveball. A lot of people that watch our channel actually are coming from an entirely different state, like Delaware, Texas, Virginia, which is kind of funny, like who actually navigates back to California. So from state to state, what would you say might be the biggest adjustment for a parent, that might be in a public education system, like let's just say in Texas to California? Like, would you say that there's kind of like this golden standard that you might see more here in California?
Yeah, I think that we have a very diverse state, and we may not see that so much up here in Shasta County. We do have, diverse populations, but obviously throughout the rest of our state is much more diverse than we are up here. And so you're going to see that in our curriculum and in our instruction, that it needs to be inclusive and it should be culturally responsive, and that we should be using teaching strategies that make every student of every walk of life feel included and a part of the curriculum, because there's so much research that shows if a student can't identify with what they're learning, they're not going to engage in it. And so therefore they're not going to learn and they're not going to perform well. We might see behavior problems increase if they're not feeling connected to what's happening on their school campus. And so California does have a lot of legislation that, an ed code that makes schools make all students feel included.
Got it.
And you're going to see differences in standards and curriculum. I mean, literally different textbooks being used in different states. So there is a shift for sure.
Yeah. And out of curiosity, is there a state that you guys are trying to model, not so much in the diversity range, but just in like the reading scores, the math, literacy, like all that? Is there like a state that you guys try to model after of like trying to improve the, curriculum to get to?
Not that I can answer with like a yes, no necessarily. I think that we are seeing very similar results across the country in math and reading.
Gotcha.
And so it's a nationwide,
like trying to.
Yes. But I do think California is a big leader in the world of education. And I think a lot of states look at us for what to do. I mean, to get a teaching credential in California is much more rigorous and has much more requirements. So a lot of people that are moving here have to do more to be able to get a California teaching credential, whereas California teachers can just go pay a credential fee and likely get a credential anywhere. So
I think that's kind of like across the board, like, because with like nursing and everything, like I know if you had your California license, it's like so much easier to go anywhere, but coming, here, it's like you have to like do some additional classes or whatever. So again, no kids. So I'm like a little sponge right now. I'm like, tell me everything. So as newcomers come to our area, let's talk a little bit about just obviously the different school districts. There's tons of different school districts. And I think a lot of people obviously want what's best for their kids, obviously what works for the family. So how does the enrollment work here? Obviously we have public, we have private, and then I know that there's just different aspects of charter schools as well. So how does those kind of vary here in our area?
What's really cool is that Shasta County is an open enrollment county. So you can go and get your kid into any school. Of course, if they're at max capacity, if there's discipline issues, academic issues, those sorts of things, a school can deny a transfer student, but it is open enrollment. So a lot of places you'll go, you better live next to the school that you want your kid to go to. That's not the case here in Shasta County. We have almost 30 school districts, almost 100 public schools, 15 charter schools, and 16 private schools. So there's an insane amount of options across our county, but we have a pretty big geographical county. Some of those districts have one school, some of them have 10, so they vary greatly. And I would say that, when as a realtor, you could sell a house to people anywhere and not be worried about, oh, you better be close to that school. But like I said, there are reasons that a school could deny a student. And so what would happen is if somebody bought a house in one neighborhood near their school of residence, that's what we call it, that school has to take those children. If they want to go elsewhere, they would have to go to the school of residence, get a transfer paper approved from that outgoing administrator, and then they take that form to the school that they want to go to, and that school has to approve them. Typically, that's going to happen. If it's a student that, is a pretty good student and not anything flags them as they review those records. But private schools obviously charge. The public schools are going to be free. Our charter schools are all public charter schools, so those are going to be free to attend. The private schools don't get any state funding, and so they have to charge fees to pay for salaries, curriculum, all the things. They're pretty good at fundraising as well. But lots of options. And I would just say, honestly, you have to research. If you're going to move here, you need to do your research and go visit the schools and get a feel for what their climate and culture feels like. Our website, the Shasta County Office of Ed website, is a great place to start. You can go to Shasta County Schools. There's a tab at the top, and then every single school's website is linked there. So you can just start clicking through and checking out the websites. And then California Dashboards, which is the accountability website for all California public schools, that you can go on there and you can see English language, art scores, math scores, science is coming, suspension rates, graduation rate, college and career readiness, English learner progress, and then there's some different standards like in regards to climate and all of that sort of stuff. So those are two really good places for newcomers to go and research. They can click through websites and then go over to the California Dashboard website and be like, oh, okay, how are they scoring academically? Right. Are they suspending a ton of kids? Are these high schools graduating students at a high rate? So those are two good places to research.
Yeah. I mean, I personally didn't even know about that website. So that's really good.
Yeah.
I'm always like, top schools in Shasta County.
The dashboard is a good indicator of how that school is performing.
Gotcha. And so like the schools have to like submit reports every single school year or whatever, as in terms of like, the academic pass rate and whatnot. So it's kind of like almost like a live dashboard for a parent.
It is. And it's updated once a year. And that comes out in November, December. And so if you're looking before then, you're looking at and you're always looking at the previous year's data.
Right.
But yeah, so there's various things that load into that dashboard, certain assessments, certain databases. But yes, they all have to do that. And that is part of their accountability, their funding. And then based on that throughout the state, depending on how they perform on that dashboard, they could potentially be put into, support programs, differentiated assistance, where like our county office will come in and support them to help improve metrics that might not be hitting the mark.
Gotcha. Let's say you're maybe exploring the idea of, I don't know, more of like a charter, private homeschool, aka where I was. I know that Shasta County actually has like a ton of co-op resources. How familiar are you with all kind of like the co-ops here in Shasta County? And would you say not a large percentage, but a good percentage of people have shifted away from the public school metric to kind of like more of a co-op?
So we have 15 charter schools right now, and that fluctuates depending on lots of different things. I will admit, I don't know much about the private schools, just because we don't really support them in a great amount. But there are a lot of them. The charter schools, we support all of them. And so on our website, the Shasta County Office of Ed website, you can start going through all of the charter schools as well and looking at, they're the most specialized in programming. So a public school, a normal public school is going to be pretty traditional. There's going to be unique programs and awesome opportunities for students at each one, but charters are going to be the type of school that can do, part-time at school, part-time independent study, or homeschool, or there's lots of unique programming at the charter schools. I would say that that's one thing that a positive thing that came from COVID is it made schools, even traditional ones, really look at how they teach students and what they offer students. And some of our charter schools are excellent and offer really unique educational programs that meet the needs of kids.
Yeah. It's kind of like molding to like what makes most sense. Would you say that with the charter school, so if a family's coming in, let's just say there's a disability or a learning kind of need and extra support, where would you say that family could land in the best support? Would you say that they would find it best at a public school, or I guess it kind of just depends on the need, but where would you say like our county actually supports that type of learning disability to really help support that family?
So all of our charters and all of our public schools are going to support students on 504 plans, which is not a special education entity or a document, but it's still this student has some special needs that need to be accommodated. They're all going to serve those students, and then they're all going to serve students on IEPs, individualized education programs. So there's a county SELPA. You're going to test my knowledge of this acronym right now, but it's California Special Education Local Plan Area.
Sounds great.
Okay, SELPA is what you need to know. And they have a website, and they oversee all special education. I guess they support all special education in the county. They're a great resource. So if you're coming into the county and your kid has a unique special need, SELPA is a great place to reach out to and say, hey, here's my situation, here's my students' special needs. Do you recommend a certain school or district or charter school that specializes in supporting students with this specific need?
Yeah.
So I think they're the experts, and that would be a great place to go. But all of those schools should serve those students.
Yeah. So with the special needs and kind of supporting the families, and then just as like the greater whole, if I was a newcomer, obviously the dashboard sounds like the best way to kind of really understand the education system as a whole. I don't have kids. Let's just say magically we have 2 kids and we're going to send them to school. As somebody looking from that lens, what are you mainly looking for that grades a school successful? Is it the graduation rate? Is it all categories? Like I would assume that it'd be graduation rate, to be honest with you. But at the same time, you've been in the profession way longer than I've even thought of school and my magical children that I don't have. But what would you consider a successful school here in Shasta County?
So I would look at 2 things. Well, first of all of our middle schools or our K-8s typically feed into one high school.
Okay.
And so that's another deciding factor. Like if you first look at the high schools that you want your kids to go to when they get to that age, then you can look at what schools feed into that. Again, you can transfer to any of these, but some people want their kids to grow up with the same kids that they're going to go to high school with. So you could start by looking at the high schools. And yeah, graduation rate is a great one. But also college and career readiness. How well are they preparing my kid to go through any open door when they graduate? Because not all kids are going to go to college, but it'd be nice that when they graduate, they have the option, right? I've met all the requirements to go to college or to enter their career field. And so that shows me that they're looking at the whole kid, right? And that they want to have as many opportunities for that student when they graduate.
Right.
I also would look at suspension rate. If a school has a high suspension rate, they're probably not doing much to support the whole student. Again, It's like most behaviors, there's a reason why behaviors are happening. And if a school is just jumping straight to a suspension rather than restorative practices or really getting to know that student, I would say climate and culture and low suspension is important. I want my kids to be at a school that supports them, loves them, will help them through mistakes and behaviors, rather than just try to, push them off and suspend. Yeah. So I would probably start with high schools and then potentially looking at what schools feed into that high school. You're going to see very similar in our K-8s, our elementary and middle schools, pretty similar academic scores across the board. Like we all the time are comparing ELA, English Language Arts, and math scores. And it's pretty, So that's why I would lean on, especially with the youngers, going and visiting those schools. How does it feel when you walk in the office? How does it feel when you meet the principal? Is the principal out and about? Are teachers happy and smiling? Are kids happy and smiling? Those are the things to me personally that matter a lot. But I'm an involved parent, and I think that that's honestly the secret to success for any kid. And as a principal, those were the kids that were the most successful, were the ones that, not necessarily parents, but maybe it was grandparents or aunt and uncle, or they had an adult that was really involved and cared about them and communicated with the school. And I think if you're that, then your kid's gonna probably succeed in any school you put them in.
Yeah. That's really helpful. I'll remember that.
For your magic kids.
Yeah, my magical kids back there. So moving into, obviously we've talked a little bit about the state kind of wide problems. Shasta County has its own headlines, as any county does. Yeah. And so when somebody is kind of moving to this area, where would you say kind of the challenges are of the Shasta County education system?
I think we face unique challenges up here in the North State. We've had so many wildfires, knock on wood, because it's been a couple of years since we've had any bad ones. Now, I shouldn't have said that, but that did major trauma, collective trauma across the North State. And so did COVID. COVID was obviously a huge traumatic, yes. But up in Shasta County, we have pretty low socioeconomic populations. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. Our kids have higher than average number of traumatic events throughout their childhood, taking away the fires, taking away COVID, just in their homes and their personal life. So throughout our county, things that are really important are having structured systems of support, like interventions. When a kid isn't doing well, how are we stepping in and intervening to not just keep pushing them along, but to really get them to grade level or to help them mitigate that trauma. Most of our educators know about trauma-informed practices. So they're doing things to try and not trigger trauma when kids are at school, and how to mitigate those behaviors. And the third thing we're doing is we have a whole department in our county office called community schools. And so we have like 50 different community connectors. So there are these employees that work on school sites that connect our families with tons of resources. It could be as simple as clothing, gas cards, hotel rooms, just anything that they might need, mental health services. And that's been huge across our county. And helping, just like I said, that low socioeconomic population, and then all that collective trauma that we've gone through. So those are unique things about Shasta County. I mean, you're going to see trauma everywhere you go, but we're a little higher in those things.
Yeah. And with the community schools, where would you say that resource would be? Because
it's through our county office, but we employ people that go and work on the school site. So most of our schools and districts have a community connector on the school site. So if a family needs some resources, most schools have counselors, but they also could go to this community connector that can connect them with tons of resources.
That's awesome. So I know that in general, most schools are open enrollment unless you go private, but I do know that we do have a handful of schools that are lottery, and some folks moving into our area are really, curious about the lottery system. How would you say that is helpful for our area? Do you feel like that a lot of people are fighting to get in the lottery school districts versus other schools? What's kind of your experience with that?
Yeah, so it fluctuates depending on the grade and the year. So if there's, let's say the incoming sixth graders, there's a ton of them across the county, like it's just a big bubble number of sixth graders, those lottery systems are going to be more impacted. And so those will be years where it's more challenging to get in. I know at one specific school, there's years where everybody gets in because there's just not as many students in that grade level. But then there are other years where the waiting list is like 200 kids just because it's a really large.
And I know that's when the in-district, like being in-district actually bumps you a little bit favorable versus, open enrollment so you can go like wherever.
You're right. And some schools with lottery, it's if your sibling goes there or your parent works there, then you're an automatic in, and then they first take being within the district, and then anybody outside that district is going to be your last pick in those lottery systems.
One of the ones that one of my clients actually just went through was they went into the lottery. They definitely were out of district. And so I think that it's important for people that do the lottery system or thinking about doing a school that has a lottery system is to understand, because it was from, hey, they applied and now they're on a wait list. And now they don't have to go back through the whole lottery system again. They just have to sit on the wait list until they eventually get their number pulled, to enter in that school. And like you said, some folks, it's like worth the wait, and they just kind of bebop around like another kid, eventually gets there. And other times you just kind of land in an environment that works better for your kid.
Totally.
So I know that we talked a lot about the dashboard. We talked about the involvement. Is there anything you could say to newcomers coming into our area that could help best support, just kind of like the overwhelming idea of like, maybe my kid was in a good school district, or maybe my kid wasn't, and where I'm coming from, I'm just really hopeful that we can land them, in a place that really supports them. Is there anything specifically being in the school district and having two kids that you could see, any last final words? Take it away.
So really wrap it up and say something great.
Inspiring moment.
Yeah. No pressure. I can't stress enough to just take the time to research. And I think the worst place to research is social media, because one experience can make somebody so biased one way or the other. And I think looking at the the school's websites and visiting and going to the dashboard, like those are factual, reliable resources rather than just like, hey, you should go to this school because my kids go there. Or so just really finding that fit, but taking that time, because switching schools for a kid, it can really hinder them academically. And moving here is hard enough, right? And then potentially not being happy with the school and being like, I'm going to move my kid next year. That's rough on a kid's academic performance and progress. So I don't have like this unbelievable motivational, inspirational thing other than just taking that time. And I just can't help myself but to give a pitch. Like if you have young kids, read with them at home or with them or to them, because we just see such a difference in students. The kids that get read to and, have help with their homework, like that's just such a game changer. But in selecting schools, it's hard to point anybody in a specific direction. Because everybody has unique needs and they want different things. And some schools have great programs like Capturing Kids' Heart and others don't. And some have positive behavior interventions and some don't. So it's really just taking the time, and their websites should typically give you all of that information.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to end with probably what would be a dumb question, but there's no dumb question.
No, there's not. Any teacher would tell you.
Blink twice if that's a lie. Okay. No, that was only 1 week. Because I don't have kids, so I don't even think about this, but I can only imagine somebody coming. If you're in an area that obviously you're in district, transport, how does that work if you're, okay, this might sound like a dumb question, like you're going to have to take your kid to school, but this is just clearly showing I don't have children. But like, let's just say I'm out of district, I'm going inter-district transfer to a different school. Does the bus system work only for pickup and drop off if you're in district to those schools, or how does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. That was
no, it's not. It's not dumb at all. But each school has an attendance area in the county, and so their transportation goes just through that attendance area.
Okay.
When I was an assistant principal and we had students that were on a transfer and they were having a hard time getting there, and I'm not saying all districts will allow this, but we would arrange like, okay, get your kid to at least a bus stop that's in our area so that bus can pick them up.
Totally.
But typically if you're going on a transfer, you're gonna have to likely drive your kid.
I'll just ask it for that one viewer that has the thought. I'll throw myself out there. But anyway, this has been super helpful, and we'll drop all the links in the caption for the dashboard, your guys' website as a resource. So this episode's been super helpful, and I know it's going to help a lot of people who are coming to our area and just trying to understand our education system. We're obviously going to drop all the websites that you talked and referenced in the caption so that people can just explore and understand it better. And if anybody has questions that maybe I didn't ask or thought of, they can call the office at the Shasta County of Education, and then you can kind of point them in the right direction.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for joining us on this episode of Rooted in Reading. As always, don't forget to hit that like button, comment below any questions you might have about our education system that we didn't answer in this video, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button as we share weekly updates about the Reading housing market and the real estate market as a whole. As always, thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Rooted in Reading. We'll see you next week.